Now, this is a random eBay pickup, and he's not the cleanest example, but do you know what this guy reminded me of? Zoidzilla. And it's a funny thing because when I found out what he was actually called, or at least what his toy line is, many other people also describe him as Zoidzilla when they're advertising him in auctions as well. So I think it's the, you probably can't see that at the moment, but he's got wheels on his feet, which is cool. This little tail gun here, I think that's what reminds me of Zoidzilla. If you don't know who Zoidzilla was, he was the leader of the Blue Zoids from the Tomy Zoids toy line of the early 1980s. This guy is actually much more modern. He is a motorized attack robot, or a Mars robot, if you will, produced by Hap P Kids, apparently. It also goes under the name of Cybotronics. And this is an Ultimate Dino Force walking dinosaur. And as I say, I didn't know exactly. For some reason, bizarrely, I think the first time I saw the auction, I thought it was something to do with the Happy Meal offer. So when he arrived and he was this size, I was actually quite surprised because he's quite big and he's electronic. So if I do this, it's actually the first time I've seen him walk, but I knew he did. He's still going. Okay, I need to stop him now. He's just carrying on going. But let me turn him on and do it this way. Now I think he does other stuff as well. You see, I mean, I just like the moulding on him. He's got these sort of kick-ass grappling guns. Where his arms really ought to be. But, you know, he's got these little teeny tiny claws, which obviously aren't going to do a great deal to anything, but he has got twin Gatling guns on both arms. So he looks pretty fierce. He's also got these kind of blaster things that can come up over his shoulders. And that's also quite cool. I quite like the look of that. They could be jets, they could be whatever you want them to be, basically. But they look for all the world like sort of particle beam accelerators or similar to me. So again, you know, they are pretty cool. You might even be able to fire backwards and up or something. I don't know. Who knows? Now, okay, so that works even when he's not moving. Alright, he gets a little bit carried away with the movement. He's pretty cool. I like him a lot. He's like, wow. Now that's interesting because that's actually switched to off. So that button works regardless. I'm quite proud of myself because I managed to clean the contacts on his battery compartment to get him going. He's only dates from about sort of mid-2000s, I believe. So he's not ancient. But the funny thing is, I believe that my lad had a toy from this range that was more like a humanoid robot that could also walk. So I inadvertently got one that was actually from the same range, even though I didn't know that it was at the time. But I got him because I just thought he looked like a really interesting model, and I was interested to see what its sort of background was and who it was by, because a lot of people, I think, assume it's like a Power Rangers Zord or something similar, and in fact, he does have a compartment here in his chest, which triggers the music again, where a little figure can live, but I don't have the figure. And he also came with a little jet, which again I don't have. But they're obviously really well thought out toys, and they're... Alright, enough now. Good lord. Okay, he gets a little bit excitable. But they're not licensed, they're not from anything. So of course, you know, they could probably sell them quite cheaply because they didn't have to pay off the license at the same time. But somebody has put a fair bit of thought into it, and it's pretty chunky, you know. It's got a nice array of weapons because it's got the tail gun, it's got the Gatling guns. It's well thought out, and I appreciate the fact that somebody actually has put some sort of effort into that, even though it wasn't a licensed piece. He's got, you know, he can walk pretty convincingly. He's got rollers on the bottom of his feet, so he can move around a bit faster if you want him to. And he's not a bad size to play with other toys. I mean, he could almost be a sort of Transformer-esque thing, or he could be a Tomy Zoid. I mean, he could be all sorts of things. And I think that's why I liked him, because he kind of reminded me of a lot of stuff that I had from childhood, or that my son sort of played with subsequently. So, you know, were my son a bit younger, he'd probably quite happily play with that now, because it's not the sort of thing that really ages, you know? So yeah, I think it's rather cool. The reason I chuckled when I found out what its name was, and the reason I call this video what I have, is that at the same time as I was looking at getting him from eBay, I also noticed some rats on eBay. So I thought, Mars, rats, acronyms, it's all good. So the other thing that I picked up from eBay was this fellow. And not just this fellow actually, but I'll show you him first. This guy has quite a lot of history to him, because he was produced by Tomy, who I've just mentioned. And at the time when he was produced, they had just about finished, or were finishing, doing the first wave of sort of Generation 1 Zoids. So he's from exactly the same thinking as the Tomy Zoids were. He dates from 1984, and over here in the UK, he was part of the Robot Anti-Terror Squad, RATS, but apparently in the States he was from the Robot Anti-Transformation Squad. They changed it slightly. But both of those lines, in turn, came from a line called Stariors. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And they came out in 1984. They had some comics produced for them. They apparently didn't get animated, but very nearly did. And in Stariors terms, this guy was called Slice. In Rat's terms, he's called Blade. So basically, he got recoloured, rebranded, and released in Europe under this Rat's brand name, which I remember very clearly, which is why I picked him up, because I had a slightly different one that had a big sort of reflector sort of hand instead of this this sort of spinny hand that you can see here. Now, it does sort of try and spin. They were wind-up toys just like the Zoids were, but unfortunately it's a little bit temperamental. So even though it's wound up here, it'll probably just spontaneously go off in about 2 minutes after I've finished filming, which will be slightly terrifying, but there you go. Now, the other interesting thing about him is that in his headpiece there, they were supposed to have brains that look like humanoids. I know, strange but true. And all these parts come off, by the way, so he's completely modular. So you can interchange them, which is clever. But inside here is what I think is a Zoid pilot. So there's a little gold android figure in there, and I think that is actually a gold Zoid android figure. I could be wrong, but those are the guys who used to control the good guy blue Zoids. I don't know if I can get this going at all. It doesn't really seem to want to, but basically you can imagine that would... Oh, there we go. On camera and everything. There we go, super. So he does still kind of go if you give him a little bit of a nudge. And that was one of their selling points. He's still trying to go. Now, that wasn't the only thing in the line though. There were also action vehicles, and I picked up this guy in the same auction, and he is called Fire Eater. Now, I don't think there is a Starior equivalent of him, so far as I'm aware. And as you push him along, his mouth opens. You might be able to see that way. And rather surprisingly, when you press the trigger on the back, he does this, which is quite a positive action. But he's quite a nicely moulded sort of guy. He's got a nice lion's head on him. Also, just wanted to show you the add-ons that they had as well, because this took me right back as soon as I had it in my hand. So these are little extra weapons that you can attach at various points to both the figures and the vehicles. So you've got a lot of extra playability out of these guys just by slapping some of those on them. I used to use those as little spaceships, because that's me. But you've got quite a large variety of them. I'm not sure if they all came from the one set or if they actually just came from, you know, a combination of all the ones that I've got. But just gives that extra little bit more playability to them, I think, which is, you know, was a smart move on Tony's part. Now, when things got really serious, of course, you get the heavy weapons out, and this is a heavy weapon. This was called a star shooter, and again, no Stario equivalent, I believe, but basically it's a disc shooter. You can load shed loads of discs into there, and then you put two humongous C-class batteries in. Unfortunately, this one doesn't work. I have tried it with batteries, but whereas the Zoidzilla I've just shown you is powered by 3 AAAs, this thing needed 2 C batteries to make it go when it was going. So it had a little switch back here to switch it on and off, and then I guess that would have done the business to shoot it out. But it's clever because not only do you get that, you also get a seat, and the seat then fixes into the back of that. One of the figures sits on the back here, and then you plug the whole lot into this. And so you end up with a mobile weapons platform like that. So again, it's a very, very well thought out sort of, you know, I don't know what you call it. Do you call it a construction toy? Is it just a toy? I don't know. But it's definitely something. And, you know, it's just impressive because you could do all sorts with it. It's very, very modular. I'll try and sit him on the back here. I think I've seen the pictures. The other thing I should mention is he's quite articulated as well. He's actually got knee joints. I thought they were going to be fixed, but they're not. They do actually have knee joints. So you can actually do things like that with him. So there you go. And I don't think the actual Star Shooter came with a figure originally. So you would have to, of course, buy it separately. But it's it works as a concept. Yeah, so he just sort of sits on the back there and whooshes along, and you presumably deal sort of hot, disky death from the front of it. So it's a nice example. It's a nice example of a toy of its age. You know, it's nice sort of, you know, it's nice primary colours and, you know, black, white, red. It's gold even. You know, so yeah, it's just great, and I do have such clear, just have such a clear memory of these little guys. And as soon as I saw it, you know, I remembered playing with those, but I probably wouldn't have been able to tell you where they came from if you showed me them in isolation. So it was pure chance that I happened to spot this on an auction, then spotted them with it, and I thought, oh, that's where that came from. So, yeah, nice memories, good toy. And I love Zoids as well. I mean, Zoids were, you know, obviously far more construction involved with Zoids, but I wouldn't say no to getting some Zoids back as well at some point. Because I have seen some. They're not particularly cheap Zoids, it has to be said, but then so many little parts to lose. So I guess, you know, if you can find them, I mean, the thing is, they have been produced over many years, the Zoids, so you could find modern day examples of them. But, you know, I'm being an oldie, I quite like getting the G1 Zoids, I guess. So I think that was it. I think that's my information download for those two. But I just thought it was funny that they both use 4-letter acronyms to sell themselves, because I guess that's straightforward to remember, isn't it? But they are just evolutions of the same thing. So we've got one plastic battery-powered toy that walks. We've got another guy who's kind of modular and wind up, but then, you know, they had upgrades that were battery-powered as well, and it's exactly the same principles all around. So the more things change, the more they stay the same, it seems. So I think that's it for me for now, thank you. So do like and subscribe as ever. Cheers for now.